The understanding that something must be addressed regarding mental health issues is a much discussed topic right now. And while there are changes in approach coming forward, we are still, in some cases, waiting to see that groundbreaking change. Inside of the bigger discussion of mental health is a focus on some of the issues that youth are having in that area. Philadelphia area company Tridiuum is trying to impact this area with a new health assessment tool designed specifically for kids. CEO Mark Redlus joins us to discuss what they are working on. Mark also just happens to be a Wharton grad, so it gives him an opportunity to be visiting old stomping grounds. Mark, great to meet you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Dan. It's great being here.
I want to start, before we get into the company, but why specifically for you and the company, the focus on children's mental health?
So, a growing percentage, I think, of the issues that are going on with mental health happen to be kind of pulling or coming out with the youth, with 5 to 17-year-olds. And you're seeing that manifest in, obviously in the media, where we're seeing this around high schools around the country, and this pediatric kind of movement towards paying attention to these issues earlier on, and getting parents and children involved in looking at that and getting after those issues is something that we're seeing a lot more of in the health systems, the integrated health delivery systems we work with, and that kind of precipitated our move to launch a new product to support that.
So you're talking about an area which, as you kind of alluded to, you have the kids, you have the parents, you have schools, you have hospitals. There are so many kind of connective pieces within just this focus right now.
Yeah, what the major challenges are is how do we get help for these kids?
Yeah.
And these situations are manifesting in all of those places and different stakeholder venues that you're talking about there that everybody's traveling through. And the default situation or the default place you're going to go for help typically will be to your doctor. I mean, that's usually the broadest point of care, whether it's for an adult or a child.
Right.
Is, I'm going to go to my pediatrician and I need some help. And the situations or the issues, I don't think they're any different than they were probably 30 years ago. They're certainly more visible out there in the world, but they're not. But they're probably not any worse. But with this destigmatization of mental health issues, people seem to be more and more comfortable about talking about their own depression, sometimes maybe broadening out what's going on with them and calling it depression, but it could be anxiety, it could be PTSD, it could be a variety of issues along those lines. Those all migrate into children as well. And so being able to figure out or get in the situation between child and parent and investing our time in that to support those interactions, we're trying to bring out and surface those issues in these settings earlier rather than later, before they turn into, really manifest into pretty serious situations.
So then Tridiuum is what in this whole process? Yeah,
so we're a digital behavioral health technology company, specializing specifically in outcomes management around this particular area, running the gamut of everything I just mentioned: depression, anxiety, PTSD, and associated issues around addictions and things like that. We score and assess the risk of patients, again, ranging from ages 5 all the way through 90, or up past 90 probably, and scoring the risk on those folks, and then tracking how they improve or don't improve over time with our technology. And in the process, we actually facilitate some expanded capability around servicing and serving those patients and supporting those patients with providers in the different interventions that you would have, from social work to psychiatry.
And seemingly there are, when you think of all aspects of the health industry right now, the technology side of it is such a crucial part. And we see it more and more even when you go to the hospitals, but obviously a lot of the companies that are involved behind the scenes in terms of trying to use the technology and the data and the analytics to be able to bring forth new ideas to be able to tackle a lot of these health concerns.
Yeah. I think there was 10, 15 years ago, there was this movement towards EHR or EMR-based systems, and you see them all over the country. If you've gone to your physician at all in the last year, you probably encountered those via a tablet or some type of interaction in the exam room. And those were all largely organized around compliance and kind of check the box, keep track of the data, and protect patient privacy. But there's been this emergence, and we're part of this emergence in the last probably 5 years, but certainly more pointedly in the last 3, of point-based solutions supporting direct care with patients and supporting the interactions between said provider, and patient. And we're part of that kind of growing movement that starts potentially in the provider patient interaction directly and migrates into mobility-based solutions with your iPhones and tablets and things like that.
So is that really the best way? And I think a lot of people believe that whether it is doing an app that you're able to download and connect via your tablet or smartphone, that is really kind of the way, one of the best ways to be able to connect with not only the medical community, but with the potential patients as well.
Yeah. Obviously, you want to get people where they are, and most of us are always on our phones.
Yeah.
So to be able to capture that time outside of the regular therapeutic sessions that I think drive a lot of the mental health interactions today, mental health treatment interactions, being able to extend beyond that is a big part of this. And the part that shouldn't go unlooked at or unreviewed is the idea of social support. So this growing area of beyond the regular treatment protocol is surfacing other ways where people that have problems, people that have depression or PTSD, are finding other folks that have those problems and maybe further along in their journey, supporting one another. That really is part of the new expanded view of kind of the patient journey, is supporting them well beyond what would be considered clinical, traditional clinical therapies.
So how specifically are you trying to tackle the youth aspect of this involving the technology side of it?
Yeah, so our product, which we launched officially this week, but it's now present in a couple of different integrated health delivery systems around the country right now, larger systems. Our product sits right at the point of when the patient, the child, comes in for their first appointment. And it's used to assess and score kind of where they are right now.
Right.
Again, a battery of all those things: depression, anxiety, things that kids are facing, that we're all facing. But it also incorporates the parental part of that feedback loop too. So it actually provides an assessment platform for both child and parent and then brings and joins it together to give the therapist, the doctor, the clinician a more comprehensive view of what's going on with this child, so that we can really work and prioritize these issues and challenges in our sessions with them.
So how do you grade or gauge where that person is? I mean, obviously the data has to play a big role in terms of what you see with that child, what you hear from the parent, but also probably on a grander scale, what the medical community has seen with a lot of these issues in the years past.
Yeah, so we're probably the most validated digital behavioral health technology company that exists, certainly in the United States, if not the world. We've gone through more than 30 plus peer-reviewed scientific and validated publications, been part of more than 24 studies over the last decade and a half plus. With really critical research partners putting the science into this technology. And part of that science, it kind of manifests in 2 ways. One is that scoring capability that you're talking about. Yeah. And the other part is our predictive capabilities of how well this patient is likely to fare during treatment and what your expectations should be in that treatment. The scoring part of this, which we've dubbed the BHI, and that's how the world knows of it from us in the clinical world.
Behavioral Health Index.
Behavioral Health Index, right. The BHI is a percentile score index, a composite index that looks at multiple dimensions of behavioral health function or dysfunction in that case, incorporating depression, anxiety, subjective well-being, overall functioning, those types of things. Right. And that scoring is, as you might expect, the higher that score goes, the more severe that patient is relative to the rest of the population. So that is all informed largely from a myriad of scientific studies that we've done in multiple systems around the country with large study population groups, both phase 1 and phase 2 based trials and the like. And we've compared that to other validated measures that exist out there to look at how risky or how severe somebody is in what they're dealing with.
Right.
So all that scoring goes in right at the start, and then we score that patient, that child or that adult, for almost every session of treatment that they go through. We're scoring to kind of measure the progress of that and see how that hopefully is declining over time.
The other part to which you alluded to a second ago, which is obviously important when you're talking about dealing with kids,
right,
is the fact that you need the input from the parent.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the child at whatever age that may be, and obviously the younger you're going to see this greater, is that child doesn't really have the understanding a lot of times of what is actually going on, why something may be happening. And the adult obviously may be able to give a little bit of a different view and have, you know, the understanding that adults tend to have a lot of times over kids in this case.
Yeah. Interestingly, you'll see, and I'm sure this isn't of any surprise to you or your audience, but you see a lot of diametrically in the early going here, diametrically opposed views of what's going on.
Absolutely,
from the child's perspective and the parent's perspective.
I've got 3 kids. That happens every day to me. So
right, right. So I think from that standpoint, you know, validating kind of what's going on, it's a great jump off point for discussion, right? When you're going into these sessions. And what we've found historically with the adult population, kind of the 18 and over, we think will have really interesting implications in the youth population, is this idea that we've compressed the time it takes to get at working on the problem from what a traditional kind of past treatment approach might be. It used to take 2-3 sessions, which could span a couple of weeks, before we got at, okay, we've identified this is your chief problem and now we're going to work on it. Not to say that people aren't working on things, but but what it's migrated to is with our product, we've made the first 15 minutes of the first session really full-throated and comprehensive in understanding where it is, and they're working on the problem before they leave the first session. So when you think about the implications of that, of cost in supporting kids and adults, but also of getting at hyper severe problems early and trying to get those into a recovery mode, you've got some really exciting things happening.
And you bring up a great point that I wanted to touch on anyway. We're in a time right now where seemingly almost everything surrounding medical, one of the important conversations is cost. And there are obviously so many ways that I think are being looked at right now of how to be able to provide the best care, whether it is, you know, cancer or mental health, whatever the issue is, how to be able to provide the best care, but also be able to minimize the cost on it as much as possibly you can. And therein lies what probably you're driving at right now, of being able to provide that care, but also focus on the business side of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's patient first, and we spend so much time on that. But to get to the patient, you've got to make for a business case that works for the system, the plans, the provider groups, and make that all work. And what we've found, and not surprisingly, is we isolated the 7 top comorbid diseases out there, ranging from what you would expect, diabetes and cancer to chronic kidney disease, you know, and the like. You can kind of imagine what that disease category would look like. But the participation rates of comorbidity, and to define that as disease is present in 2 different, or you have 2 different disease categories that are kind of working in some cases against each other, but are at the same time happening. So we've got mental health issues happening, and we've got diabetes, or we've got mental health and chronic kidney disease happening. They tend to expand each other and the severity of both situations. And what you can, you know, as an illustrative point, and this holds true in those 7 disease areas, a disease without a mental health issue costs X. A disease with a mental health issue costs 4X when you're talking about those participation rates. So if you think about behavioral health and mental health specifically, but addiction and substance use too, as a lever that you can pull, that you can work with and manage, it's one of the least expensive levers that you can get after to have the biggest outsized impact across the entire cost of care continuum. And that's where we spend our time with integrated delivery systems, is how can we pull a lever and move it 5% and have this effect of of 20, 30, 40% on the other side of that lever. It is a really compelling value proposition when you look at the numbers.
All right, I'm going to take your kind of medical hat off for a second and put the business hat on.
Yeah.
As a businessman, and going through what is the process like for you? Because we hear, in terms of being able to get the approvals and the process of bringing there's the technical side, but there's also the dealing with the bureaucracy side of it. What is that process like for you as a businessman right now in going through it, in knowing that potentially you have something that can have great benefit to a lot of people, but still going through all of, I hate to use the term hurdles, but realistically they are hurdles in terms of getting forward?
Well, the predominant hurdle out there is there's technology fatigue in our health systems right now.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it's the hangover from the EHRs and the EMRs.
Okay.
A lot of capital was deployed to put those systems in. And those are largely, again, as I said, compliance-oriented systems. You're checking the box. You want to make sure you have a good handle on this. But they're not moving the needle on care. They're not improving really patient care. That's to be, I think, determined later. And so those spends have, I think, exhausted some folks to that extent. But to bring in point solutions like what we have, you need really a clinical champion and you need a business champion at the very least. And so we tend to have not a lot of challenge in getting clinical champions. The product is really compelling. It shows a movement on outcomes that's, at this point kind of indisputable what we've been able to do in improving that situation. On the provider group side, there's a lot of complexity to both capitated, at-risk based provider agreements, provider and payer agreements, and then you've got your traditional fee-for-service, approaches to this. So the economics tend to be a little bit divergent in those particular areas. And so we've had to really embrace putting forth a solution that can operate in both a risk-based model as well as a fee-for-service-based model. So we want to be able to add meaningful revenue to health systems by creating a reimbursable event with what we're doing. And for the risk-based area, we want to be able to compress cost, right? So you can imagine.
I was going to say, I can imagine what that process has to be like. When you're to a degree serving two different masters in this process,
and often in the same system, right? There's percentages of their patient portfolio, maybe 25% in risk and 75% in fee-for-service arrangements. So, our healthcare system has not made it easier to operate in the environment, but we're getting really compelling results in both models of fee-for-service and risk. And I think when you look at that going forward, we have a really more than many handfuls of early adopters that have really jumped into this. I think the proof is in the pudding as mental health just becomes a bigger and bigger issue that they've got to deal with. We're starting to see RFPs, structured RFPs coming out of large health systems for exactly what we're doing in behavioral health outcomes management platforms, starting in primary care, going all the way to specialty care. So those areas are emerging, and I think the next 3 years are going to be a ride.
So is that really the focus now for you and for Tridiuum in terms of reach? You have obviously some of the data that's coming in from the systems you're already working with, to be able to expand that and be able to work with as many systems as possible, especially if the data continues to be positive, as having that impact that you want to have on both patient and the parent, and realistically the entire family unit, because you're talking about how it impacts the entire family, not just the kid or the parent himself.
Yeah. I mean, we've jumped so far past. A lot of companies in our place are doing studies and phase 1 and pilot type environments with these health systems. We're now well over the 1.1 million patients on our platform mark. At any one second in the day, there's 5 or 6 patients uniquely interacting with our platform. We did 4,000 patients yesterday on our platform across all the health systems. I think when you think about the scale and scope of the problem, it dwarfs that. But we've been able to demonstrate, I think, this ability to scale in big ways in large health systems, some of the largest in the country, in complicated payment arrangements, meaning with their provider or their payer groups, and function at a high performance level. And I think I think that just bodes really well for, I think, for patients out there and the impact that it'll have, because it's coming. It certainly is showing up in pockets all around the country right now.
Mark Redlus is the CEO of Tridiuum, which is based here in the Philadelphia area. Your comments at 844-WHARTON, 844-942-7866. Or if you'd like, send us a comment via Twitter, either at BizRadio111 or my Twitter account, which is at DanLoney21. As this whole process is going on and you're collecting all of this data from all of these different cases that are being looked at, are you able to start to even determine other areas that are kind of offshoots of what you're doing now that are areas that need to be addressed in the years to come?
Yeah, so access is a big challenge, obviously. People being able to get seen by providers right now. And those providers range from licensed clinical therapists and social work up through psychiatrists. And if anybody's tried to get an appointment to be seen for even a family issue or just for themselves, if you have coverage, it's 90 days until you can see somebody if you're lucky. Most of it's out of pocket right now. So our technology and what we've been migrating our product and our platform to is to expand to incorporate telebehavioral and also facilitate the opening and expansion of capacity in the existing provider areas. That, when I talked about compressing the timeline from 3 visits to the first visit of working on a problem, that changes a lot at scale in the availability of providers to take on new patients. And so it's not just compression of cost, it's compression of time and available time for new patients to come in. So our product orientation is towards this whole access conversation. We've been working on outcomes, religiously for 15 years, but the gravitational pull towards access and our ability to ferret out and move through that is going to be pretty exciting. We have some great things on the horizon in the next 6 months that will start to chip away at some of the access issues.
Well, and it's not only just the access of being able to get to a doctor who's in a hospital system who's incredibly busy already. There's also the aspect of access in other parts of the country where doctor may be 50 miles away, 75 miles away, and somebody that needs that help. That's where the telehealth piece comes into it, and we've talked about it on the show. And seemingly you're a believer that telehealth may have the opportunity to really impact the medical community moving forward, even to a degree where you're concerned.
Yeah, telepsych and telepsychiatry are just really exciting spots because go back to that pulling of the small lever to affect a big change. If we can get somebody in a video visit, in the middle of the country that is, again, 100 miles from the nearest provider, and start making impact there, you're gonna and those have high incident rates of some of the real chronic diseases around if they're out in the middle of nowhere. If we can start to compress some of the stresses around that and reduce costs, there's a real impact there, I think.
Quickly in the last 2 minutes, what was it specifically for you? What was it that was the driver for you to want to get into this area in the first place?
Well, I like working on problems that are really interesting. If you can't go to this school,
this would be a big problem that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this one thing you learn here at Wharton, I think, is to you hope you are curious. I mean, I think that's the major piece here. And healthcare is obviously a massive set of trends and issues around it, around cost, around patient impact, around people just getting better overall. There's obviously a really significant opportunity to build a business, multiple businesses in this marketplace beyond even mental health, and we're just super excited about the opportunity to have the kind of impact when you wake up in the morning and you're building a business that is growing at an incredible trajectory, as well as impacting patients. We had 12 suicide saves on our platform last year.
Wow, that's fantastic.
With the tech and supporting these provider groups. So I expect that number will triple, quadruple, sadly, but also in a positive way. So you just feel great having something that you can do really well at, and you can do well by everybody else at the same time.
Great meeting you. Thank you for coming in. Thanks the best with this.
Thank you.
Mark Redlus, CEO of Tridiuum, joining us here in studio. That will take care of what we're going to do for the day and for the week. We will be back with you on Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time here on Sirius XM 111 as part of Monday's show. There are members of the United States government that are over in China right now doing negotiations with the Chinese government over trade issues. We will have an update on what is going on with that on Monday's show, coming your way at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday, May the 7th. Everybody, enjoy your weekend. We will talk to you in a couple of days right here on Sirius XM 111. Many thanks to Patty McMahon, Monique Nazareth, Daniel Bruno back in the big chair on the other side of the glass. Have a good weekend, everybody.